Welcome back to Dirty 20, guys. Today, we're going to try and help out another member of our community. Guy has asked, "Hey y'all, just found your guys' channel and I'm loving it. Would you mind doing a presentation on the Fey Wild, or the Fey in general? Of all the fantasy topics, I find it the hardest to work with because it requires so much imagination and, I don't know, chaos?" Well, Guy, like you, I also struggled with the Fey Wild for quite a while. Recently, though, I had a bit of an epiphany, which I'm going to share with you, and hopefully it will make things a little bit easier or just give you an idea of how to approach it. To understand what the Fey Wild is, we need to delve a little bit into the Great Wheel cosmology. Now, stick with me, okay, guys? The Great Wheel cosmology consists of a series of concentric spheres. In the center is the prime material plane, basically kind of where our adventurers, where they live. Now here I'm mostly talking about Forgotten Realms, vanilla D&D. It tends to expand throughout Dungeons and Dragons as the way that the universe is kind of constructed. So, in the middle, you have the prime material plane, surrounded by the ethereal plane. Outside of the prime and ethereal plane, you have the inner planes. The inner planes are sometimes called the elemental planes. Then you have the astral plane, and outside of that, you have the outer planes. Now, these tend to be places which are connected to a certain alignment. In the image, you can see that the different planes all around the outside, starting with Celestia, right at kind of 12 o'clock, is essentially heaven. And then if you look down at the bottom, you have the abyss and the plane of hell, the infernal plane. Basically, it all connects to alignment. You have good at the very top, you have evil at the very bottom, you have chaotic on the right, and you have neutral on the left. And all of those kind of in between become a mixture of those alignments. The Fey Wild is an echo of the prime material plane. What this means is that it is like a mirror universe of our world, right? If you've ever seen those cool Star Trek episodes where they have the mirror universe and you have things are the same but slightly different, right? So that's kind of the Fey Wild. You also have the Shadowfell, which is kind of a counterpoint to the Fey Wild. If the Fey Wild is kind of life and energy and chaos and, plants and growth, and the Shadowfell is darkness and kind of depression and lifelessness, all of those elements. But that's a video for another day. In the Fey Wild, magic runs rampant. It is exaggerated. Plants are gigantic. Creatures are magical in and of themselves. And the inhabitants have a kind of magic imbued into them. For example, elves are originally from the Fey Wild. And that is why, in-game, they have certain magic resistances. Think of it like a version of our world that has crazy magic everywhere and fairies and pixies and unicorns and elves and all of those kind of high magic kind of fantasy tropes. Now, the epiphany that I had recently was the realization that we have a lot of stories in the real world for us which are essentially set in the Feywild. I like to think of things like the Brothers Grimm tales as being all set in the Feywild. A place with hags and witches and giant wolves and all of these things, all of these elements that are in folklore, in folk stories about magic and pixies and elves and fairies. That for me is all part of the Fey Wild. So by tapping into these classic stories that we're all so familiar with, you give your players an anchor, something to hold on to and say, oh, okay, I think I know what this world is about. I think about maybe if I were to run an adventure in the Feywild, I might have my players come across a trail of breadcrumbs, for example. And if they follow it, they get to a house which is built of, magical bread and all of these things. Basically remixing some of those old folk tales and putting them in a D&D world and seeing how my players might deal with it. How would they deal with the three bears, right? How would they deal with a hag that's cooking children? All of these things are familiar and can be really fun to jump into and be a part of with your character. If you've seen films like The Brothers Grimm from 2005, Snow White and the Huntsman from 2012, or Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters from 2013, none of which are great films, I'll be perfectly honest with you, but they all represent the kind of thing that I think would make a great D&D campaign, right? Those kinds of stories with the action, with the combat, and still familiar with characters or tropes, archetypes that, we've known since childhood. So hopefully we've helped you out, Guy, and you can play or run a great campaign in the Feywild. But throwing it out there to the community, have you ever played an adventure or a whole campaign in the Feywild? What was it like? Did you enjoy it? What are some other planes of existence that you like playing in? I've always been very interested in Mechanus, which is the true neutral plane, as just something that's very interesting. But have you ever tried it? Have you ever tried any of the others? Thank you so much for staying with us during this time and liking, subscribing, sharing these things. It really makes us feel very, very proud, and it gives us the kind of motivation to keep making these videos for you. Keep the questions coming. We'll try and make more videos about them. Thank you, and keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. @MouthLaVictoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am EnanoLVP, and our producer is Jazzy J. Cherot. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.